for most of the movie, he's just kind of trying to get the people around um Charlie to, let their freak flag fly. And
Well, and he even talks like, to Ed about like they'll never pick on you again. Like you do
mhm,
I know I think the line is something like I know what it feels like to be an outsider,
yeah,
right? And so he's almost trying to help Ed in a way, like give him strength, give him power and to empower himself, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. And he's just, again, he is a killer. But at the end of the day,
You are a bad guy, but this does not mean you're a bad guy.
he does give Charlie a choice, just leave me alone and I won't bother you. And Charlie's like, nope.
Our Hot Ghouls of Halloween keep rolling, and we got an amazing guest ghoul this week and talking about one of my favorite vamps. We're talking movies, we're talking Fright Night, starring Kris Sanderson, William Ragsdale, and Roddy McDowall, written and directed by Tom Holland. Oh, you're so cool, Brewster.
I am Peter Vincent, vampire killer. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? We are continuing with our Hot Ghouls of Halloween series. And our guest today is Serena Whitney, former critic and current programmer of the Revue Cinema in Toronto. And we're going to be talking about the 1985 classic film, Fright Night. Serena, welcome to the
Hi.
show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been sorry it's taken so long.
I guess I also forgot the most important thing about Serena to me is also that she is the co-host of the Movies and Chaos podcast. So if you've been listening to our show, you've probably heard me reference that podcast. So
Oh, great. That's so lovely.
no, it's great. It's like I said, I feel like I've said to Scott a couple times. Your podcast is almost what our podcast could have been, except we purposely kept some of the politics out of it because I could very easily get into the political stuff. And your co-host there, when he does that kind of monologue, it's
Yeah,
usually him.
Mark.
Sometimes you do
Yeah.
it. There's that like current events kind of monologue, and I'm like, oh, I love this. This is very good.
Oh, I'm sure Mark will love to hear that. So yeah, he definitely takes a lot of time in his intros. And when I have the time to do the intro, I do it. But he's really good at it. So yeah, he usually takes the lead.
So this is our obviously we always start with shameless self promotion. So why don't you shamelessly self promote
Oh.
yourself, Serena?
Well, I wear many hats in my professional life. I think most people know me as the programming director at the Revue Cinema in Toronto. That's a really busy job. I started there by doing drunken cinema, which I still do, and I do that across cities in Canada as well. But yeah, I work at Revue Cinema, and we had quite the summer. We just got our lease renewed. I think it made like almost, I think, national world news in some parts. So that was pretty interesting.
Do you mind just for those that aren't aware, just the quick, Cole's notes on what happened with you guys, whatever you can talk about, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's on like on record is fair game. But basically, we had a bit of a well, not like the landlord had a bit of a like a beef with our board of directors, and initially wanted to turn the review into his private business and gave us no notice. And then we fought for it. I mean, we fought for what was happening, and then we all came to an agreement. It took the whole summer, but came to an agreement. So we'll see how it is working with our landlord in the future. But right now, we're just happy to still be here and entertain everybody that comes to the theater because we sell out almost every day. So especially Halloween season, we've been selling out. I'm very tired. I've had 3 nights hosting with Drunken Cinema last night and the night before for the Mummy on 35, and then the night before we hosted our Guillermo del Toro event, and that went really well.
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had a small director show up to that event, did you not? No.
Yeah, this is a small one. And he had so much fun that like he wants to do it over and over again. I was like, oh great. It's because he lives part-time in Toronto, so he was very inspired and he wants to keep doing this. And so it's going to be a regular thing. So if people missed out the first time, trust me, it will happen again and again.
Well,
So yeah.
hopefully you heard it here first, or even if you heard it here second. So,
Yeah,
and
because I haven't recorded this week's movie is in chaos, so you'll probably get it. Will probably be announced. Yeah, you. I guess because you're every Thursday too, right?
we're every Thursday. Yep.
All right, we're every other Thursday because we're so busy. But yeah, we'll be probably leaking this the same time. But hopefully, I get more information from him after he takes a much needed vacation from Frankenstein.
Well, and I would argue, is probably the reason this, little repertory cinema in Toronto got international news, because
Yes.
he's the one who actually tweeted out about, hey, maybe, come to an agreement, get this sorted out. And that this was an important issue outside of just a bunch of like movie nerds in Toronto, right?
Yeah, it was really like I was so surprised that he did reach. I mean, people were asking him on Twitter and but he took the lead and he was primarily just talking to me for 3 months every day over Twitter. He likes to use Twitter. I didn't know it was really him because I just didn't think celebrities, use their own social
Yeah,
media.
yeah, yeah.
But it was definitely him. And then we finally just moved it to email. I was like, we move this to email. I have a lot more to say.
So you're like one of the programmers, or are you the programmer? Or
I am.
does it depend on what's being programmed?
Yeah, well, so I'm a programming director, so I program like majority of the calendar, but we do have 15 special event programmers who have their own series. And yeah, so if it wasn't for them, I mean, they're the reason the appeal too, like they go on stage, they host it, some of them have band performances or drag performances or comedy beforehand. So obviously like, adding something like interactive always seems to help. So yeah, but I do a lot of the programming at the Revue, but we have a really great team as well.
So I feel like I've heard the answer to this on your show. How does one become a programmer of a cinema?
Oh wow. I mean, you'd have to well, it depends on who is hiring, like so for me, I basically sorry, I got hair in my mouth because I curly hair. But yeah, for me, you have to offer something that is unlike anything I've seen. Or it has to hit a demographic that I feel like we're in need of. And because I always like one of the primary goals as program director is to make sure that we're programming for everybody, so everybody can feel seen. But to me, I definitely like having programmers that um have experience about programming. There's a lot of people who just say, "Oh, I like movies," and that's it. And I'm like, "Yeah, so does everybody. So what makes you so different?"
Go ahead. Ask me any movie. Jaws. That's a great movie.
But yeah, so people with a marketing background or understand how to market their series or brand is really important to me. Education and like post-secondary education does not mean shit to me. So I don't think you need to be in debt for film school to understand how to present films to an audience. So yeah.
Well, and I feel like Scott and I took the same approach. We went, what does the market need? And we went, two more middle-aged white guys talking about movies. Like that is a need in the market not being satisfied. And so here we are.
Well, I mean, people love movie podcasts. I mean, like me and Mark for Movies and Chaos, we started, I think, early last year. And, for our,
Whoa. Your podcast is only like a year and a half old?
yeah, it's pretty new. Yeah, it's
wow.
still pretty new. I mean, we're still like, we're still not huge, but we're it's good. Like, we know we're getting more listeners and it takes a while. It does really take a while. Like all my friends I talk to my friends who actually have like podcasts that have a lot of viewers and listeners. They told me it took like at least a couple of years for it to pick up. So yeah, and just offering all this content is, having somebody to talk to about certain things. And we do get controversial, obviously, sometimes, and we don't think we are until we listen to it. And again, we're like, oh shit. But no one gives a shit about it, so we're good.
Scott, do you have anything to say?
Fingers crossed, man. 5 years.
Yeah,
Fingers
we're just
crossed.
starting our
5
fifth year. This is our fifth
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
We realized that our YouTube channel is actually one of our strongest assets. It seems to get them. That's correct, right? A lot of people are watching us on YouTube.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
thinking
'cause-
about doing that too, because yeah, we just do it like, honestly, I'll just love the audio only because I can do it in my pajamas and not have to do anything. But I think we might have to add that component to it eventually.
Have you started thinking with the old like Patreon, and then you gotta
Yeah.
show for yourself and
Yeah. And we noticed that most people, like, we get more listeners when we talk about, new movies. And so we've tried to see new movies. Like, I think I have to see Joker 2, much to my own, just I don't want to see it, but I have to see it to talk about why movies can be so shitty. And yeah, I don't know if you guys saw it, but yeah, I haven't seen it yet. And
I've seen the reviews, and it's again, this is weird because like I listen to your podcast enough to know your position on some of these things. The tricking people into musicals, like you guys have talked about this, and I feel like the critic reviews from like regular audience people, they're like, motherfucker, I didn't know it was a musical. And I was like, man, I knew that was gonna be. You don't,
Yeah, but wasn't it presented when they came out saying it was going to be a musical?
But when you look at the trailer, like,
Yeah,
you can't just be like, go to Cannes and be like, oh, by the way, it's a musical. Thanks, have a great day. Like,
Gotcha, bitch.
you need to show, like, imagine you watch the trailer for West Side Story and you're like, oh my God, this looks like some gang stuff. They're going to be like fighting and stuff. And then you go and watch it and it's West Side Story. And you're like, there's a lot more dancing than I thought here. You know what I mean? That's Kung Fu.
Yeah. I think at least with this one, I think I think that Scott's right, that I think it was presented as a music, but the trailer, no. And I think that's what's more important to present to people, a trailer.
Well, because not all of us are fucking nerds, right? Like we're not into we're not reading Variety in the morning, right? So go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was gonna say, I think I heard one of the problems that they had with this movie was nobody wanted to do a test screening. They were just like, fuck it, this is what it is and this is how we're going, right? And now they're just like, oh shit. Now it's kind of like a course correct, right?
Yeah.
I saw an IndieWire, and then we'll get back on track here, but I saw an IndieWire headline that was like, it's so bad it feels intentional. I was like, ooh.
I agree with that. I haven't seen the movie, but I feel like, take some balls to do a movie for us, like that was like I guess was like the biggest R-rated movie of all time at one point.
At the time, yeah. Well, and it made, because they made it for, what they make it for, like 60 million or 50 million.
50, I think, yeah.
And then it made like just a ton of money, right? And the original Joker looks gorgeous, and this film looks like it looks good. But yeah, if you sit down and you're like, all right, we're gonna see some Joker action, and then it's like singing in the rain.
This is bullshit.
I mean, I guess if you go Kubrick singing in the rain style, I mean, that could work, right? So
yeah, I might see it tonight, or I might go see it tomorrow. I'm just a little too exhausted. I was just telling Mark, I'm like, dude, I am I can't go to the theater to intentionally watch a 2.5 hour shit show. So I'll just do that tomorrow.
Scott, do you have anything else? Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about, just as far as with you, Serena, before we get into Fright Night?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm a filmmaker. I've definitely taken a few years off because the review has been taken off, but got some potentially good news. I can't share it yet, but there might be a project of mine that I've been working on for a very long time that finally might see the light of day. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, that's about it.
So are you a writer, director, producer, all the three, all the hats? What, like, is it?
Yeah, I'm more of a writer and a producer. So yeah, so I like to write more than to like direct. I only directed one time, and it was like a short I did with like I co-directed it with Justin McConnell. It was a Christmas horror comedy, because I love Christmas horror, and at that time I think it was starting to become a trend. So I just said, well, let's get on this trend before it becomes like it's everywhere. So yeah.
We could have had you on the show with your friend last week too, because we did all the Black Christmases. We just touched on
Oh
all the Black
yeah.
Christmases. Yeah. So
Those
there is
were quite the ride.
yes. What Scott did? What is it? Marry, fuck, kill for how he was going to decide
Mary
which one.
Kill. Oh, let's see. I guess Mary, the original.
Yeah.
Fuck the the middle one. Kill the last one. In my
Yeah.
opinion.
That's
no,
so crazy.
I reversed it.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, it was fuck the last one, kill the middle one.
I like the middle one. I have a soft spot for it. So yeah. I
So
think
there's actually a segue between. So the last Black Christmas has basically what's her name there? Imogen Potts is in it, and she's actually in the 2011 Fright Night.
Fright
So,
Night, yes.
So yeah, let's use that as I'm going to hand it over to Scott, and we're going to talk about the 1985 film Fright Night.
Right. Yeah, like this is for me like one of my favorites. I always revisit it on Halloween, and I just love it because it's just so like fucking out there in terms of like the opening of this movie is one of my favorite horror openings ever, where you're like thinking it's something and it's not. But then the introduction of Peter Vincent, I fucking love it because he's like holding the stake backwards, and it's like pretty much telling you like this is literally going to be the movie going forward without like nailing you in the head with it
Or in the heart.
Oh, nice. And I think Kris Sanderson might just be the hottest vampire. Sorry. I say it all
How
the
dare you?
We even had a whole conversation. It's Susan Sarandon, Kris Sarandon.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone
that guy.
I think everyone thought they were siblings for a long time and then realized, because I guess Susan Sarandon got really famous after they divorced, but she kept his name. So I guess people thought they were siblings, but she's like, no, I'm going to keep this name.
Because she's Susan Sarandon in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that's what, 76?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So I mean, Kris Sarandon, to be honest, one of my favorite roles for that minor role for him is Dog Day Afternoon. And I know that character now that he plays is probably controversial because of just where we are in the trans conversation. But at the time, like that film is like on the edge, and he does such an amazing job in that. And then obviously he plays a super bad dude in Lipstick. So
yeah, very icky role for him. Yeah. I definitely love him as Jerry Dandridge, though. I think it was a tie between him or Robert Ressler as to who my first crush was. And I think that was probably responsible for why I liked shitty bad guys until my 30s. But in my personal life, yeah, no, I think with Kris Sarandon, I think that his role was pretty he plays such a suave bad guy.
Yeah, and again, like this film is really interesting. So okay, and again, I know you've talked about this on Movies and Chaos, so a lot of this is going to feel like I'm just stealing your bit, but like, so Bud Wilkins from Slant Magazine said Tom Holland's Fright Night uses the trappings of an old-fashioned monster movie to explore sexual terrain that's decidedly from the 1980s. And I know that like the male, gay, LGBTQ aspect of this, like I know you guys have talked about this, like Kris Sarandon's characters, his assistant, what do they call those? Familiar, yeah. Like there's conversations in this about like, oh, these two men are like living together and they're keeping their house all nice, and look at all the antiques and stuff. Like, and there's a lot of sexual energy in this film in a I don't know, is it subtle? It's definitely not in your face, like pushed in your face, but it's also not subtle. So whatever the medium mean between those two is.
I think at the time it was needed to be under the radar, but for the audience to make it figure it out themselves. I mean, this is a time where, the AIDS epidemic was happening, where a lot of people were very, there was like such a gay panic. People were, they're being so rude and mean and just, people who were gay were being harassed all the time. And I think that that's what, Jerry does represent that in the sense that, at the end of the day, if you take away that he's a vampire, you know, he's going through the same things that people like homophobic people would be going through if they moved to a nicer neighborhood. Charlie is just a dick, you know, like he just practically just outs him every time. That's what he's trying to do. If he wasn't a vampire, it's just a movie about a nosy teenager just trying to out his neighbor all the time.
Which would now be like a Karen,
Yeah,
right? Like it would
he
be the
would be a
nosy.
Karen, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Uh,
Jerry's so patient at the beginning, you know, and you know, I see him as bisexual. I think that's what his like I think that's he's fluid. And for most of the movie he's just kind of trying to get the people around um Charlie to, you know, let their freak flag fly. And
well, and he even talks like, you know, to Ed about like they'll never pick on you again. Like you don't
mhm,
I know, I think the line is something like I know what it feels like to be an outsider.
yeah.
Right. And so he's almost trying to help Ed in a way, like give him strength, give him power and to empower himself. Right. So
Yeah. Yeah. And he's just, you know, again, he is a killer. But at the end of the day,
You are bad guy, but this does not mean you're bad guy.
he does give Charlie a choice, you know, just leave me alone and I won't bother you. And Charlie's like, nope. I think
so
everybody else would be like, yeah, mom, we just need to move.
so and again, I know primarily we're going to talk about the 85 version, but
Yeah.
I watched the 2011 version and it felt very, first off, so in the 1985 version, people look kind of normal. I'm air quoting, like they look kind of like people that would live in these neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
in the 2011, like everybody's attractive, except
Ooh.
except for McLovin, right?
I'm just gonna be like, "Nom, nom, 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 nom."
So Christopher Mietz-Platz, or however you actually say his name,
Yeah.
but like everybody looks gorgeous. And I mean, I guess it is 2011. I guess that's kind of what was going on in film. Like everybody had to
And
look
it was
really
Vegas.
Oh yeah, but they just
Vegas,
live
yeah.
in Vegas. Like they're not on the strip. They're just like in a weird. And it's weird because the film opens with like an aerial shot, and the subdivision is literally in the middle of nowhere. It's just like this
Yeah.
big square of houses. Boom. And one of the things I did like about the original Fright Night is that like it kind of felt normal. Like these were normal people that you would
Yeah.
run into in your day-to-day life. It was not pumped up with Hollywood, right?
Yeah, it felt like a suburban horror, you know, like, oh, this reminds me of like growing up as a kid, you know, in those neighborhoods. And yeah, the Las Vegas angle. Although I did like it. I like it. It was weird. It's like one of the remakes I was so scared about because it's Fright Night's my favorite horror film. So watching the remake, and I was like pleasantly surprised by it. You know, it does feel like a Buffy episode, unfortunately, like, you know, but
Wasn't it the same director?
I think it's the same writer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Marcy Nixon or Noxon, Marty Noxon, sorry. And you know, like Peter Vincent kind of feels like Spike from Buffy, and you can kind of feel that vibe. I love Colin Farrell's portrayal of Jerry. I think he was the only one who really did his homework and then kind of turned him into a couch potato. I love that. I love that Jerry in that movie is just he likes to eat fruit. He likes to just watch shitty, trashy TV and eat his victims while he does it. So and nibble on them.
Well, and Chris Sarandon has a cameo, I guess, as the like motorcycle victim or one of the
Yeah,
victims,
yeah.
right?
The car. Yeah.
I think
You
it's
know?
always cool when they do stuff like that.
Yeah. And it takes a second. You're like, who is that? And you're like, oh yeah, because he looks so much older, and you know, so but it was really cool that he did that just to be in it for a second.
So
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my notes. Did you know that Chris Sarandon is the speaking voice for Jack the Pumpkin King in A
Yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas? That's so cool because that's the whole thing that Danny Elfman got upset about because he had done all the singing and then they're like, yeah, we don't love your voice for the voice acting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love Chris Sarandon. I think he has like such a great presence on anything he does, you know, but Fright Night was always my favorite. I always wanted to see him in another film. So apparently he was supposed to come back in the second film, but he was him and Tom Holland were doing Child's Play. So
Mhm.
they didn't have they couldn't do it. So
Well, and then he gets to play Humperdinck in The Princess Bride.
yes,
The
Humperdinck,
fucking
yep.
biggest douchebag, one of the biggest douchebags in cinema, right? So Scott, why? Because this is one of your favorite movies as well, right?
Yeah, I like it. Like you guys are saying it because to me it's Rear Window, but just with
Yes.
with the vampire, right? Like having it similar to like how I love Halloween, like because it's just like anything can happen in suburbia. It's just like this, especially like now with like you don't really trust anybody anymore, kind of thing, right? When you have new neighbors, you're just like, who the fuck are these people? Like, what are they doing? Kind of thing. The reason why I like it is it's just like the subtleties, like you guys were saying, like when you like with the beginning when you have Amy and Charlie, right? And she pushes him away and then she decides, yeah, she's gonna do it. And you can see how self-conscious she is about it because she's putting her clothes on and he's just looking away. Right. When they mirror it with Jerry, right? Like the minute he stares at her, like he's like pretty much saying like he acknowledges her. You can see why like pretty much Charlie's whole group is just like gravitating towards Jerry, right? Because he is so suave. Like even his intro when you see him, like it looks like he's just holding the fucking casket with like one finger, right? And
Yeah.
just like walking by, right? Like it's just like to me, this is like awesome 80s, right? Like it's everything you want it to be.
And I agree with you. I also think that it's one of those movies that didn't get the credit for being one of the first meta horror films. I think like, Jason Lives and Scream and Cabin in the Woods get a lot more attention for that. But this one predates those movies, right? And it was one of the first movies to like subvert the horror tropes and conventions that we see in these like horror comedies. And it really balances horror and comedy very well in this movie. Like horror comedies generally kind of don't do well with that. So I like this one. It's funny when it's supposed to be, it's scary when it's supposed to be. So
Is that a vampire cannot enter your house without being invited by the rightful owner first.
Hello, Charlie.
For the longest time, I thought that Amy was played by, like, in my mind as a kid, I was like, oh, it's Alyssa Milano. And it wasn't until I went back and watched it for the show that I'm like, oh, it's Amanda Beers, which I'm like, it's fucking Marcy from Married with Children. It's so crazy to see her as like a young woman. Cause like as a kid, I grew up with her being the neighbor on Married with Children, you know what I mean? And then to find out that like also that it was not Alyssa Milano. I don't know why I thought it was Alyssa Milano in that role. But she supposedly had a minor role in the Doom Generation. And for any of you listeners that have not seen the Doom Generation, that is a fucked up movie, man. So I cannot believe that Amanda Beers was in that. Like it's a rough film. I would say the Doom Generation is a very rough film.
yeah, no, it is. I remember watching it and then like late at night at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, why did I do this to myself? And especially the ending, I'm like, oh.
Well, it's very
Yeah.
pornographic, like in a way that's like, but not in a sexy way. A lot of times, like in a shock value kind of way.
Yep.
I do want to say something.
Go ahead,
like you've been golden girled, man. Like this movie came out in 85 and Married with Children started in 87. I'm like, it's 2 years. She's not that much older. Because you're like, I saw her grown up, like all. I'm like, it was 2 years difference, man.
But I mean, as a kid, like I don't know, adults like you don't really know how old people are when you're a kid, right? So, what's your favorite scene in this film? Like either one of you guys.
Oh man,
Scott?
I'm trying to think.
The one I do kind of like is the club scene.
Oh yeah, the club scene.
Yeah, that's a sexy scene, man.
But not only that, like the amount of detail they had to do to make sure that he wasn't shown in any of those mirrors, like even the side mirror when he's doing just the Scooby-Doo, I'm gonna walk from one side to the other side and just get closer kind of thing. Like yeah, like I love that club scene because it like you can see like even when he's walking through the extras, like they're all gravitating towards him, right? They like his presence there is
It's such a good scene, yeah. And you see like both women and men just like going after it, touching him like while he's walking through it's such a cool scene. I would say like I like the final act. I really liked when they all get to the house and he's like, welcome to Fright Night for real.
Welcome
to Fright Night.
I really like that. There's just like moments I feel like I like, and it's mostly with Jerry. I think one of my the best, my favorite thing I always laugh at is when right at the end when Peter Vincent just goes and closes the casket, and then just Jerry just staring at him like in disbelief, but it's like it's kind of funny. So yeah, I love that part.
So did you see, like, how did you get turned on to this movie originally? Like, did you go, it's 85. Like, there's no way you
Yeah.
saw this in the theater, right?
No, I was 1 years old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, you're not that old. So
Yeah, I'm 40. This movie is turning 40, I guess, next year, right? So, and yeah, I watched this basically when I was just a kid. It was like on VHS. It was also on TV a lot, so I had like my parents used to tape stuff, and I just gravitated towards this movie. The first horror movie I actually ever remember watching is Vamp. So I was like, yeah, so I had no filter, I guess, when it came to horror movies. When I because I remember that as a baby. And but yeah, Fright Night, I just used to watch it every day. I just loved it. And it's also not that scary for like kids like after the first watch, you're like, okay, I can watch this. I think the only thing I would always like turn away from is when Evil Ed is changing back from the wolf into a human. I used to think that was so gross and I couldn't take it.
what about you, Scott? When did you get turned on to this film?
I think I'm the same. I think what gravitated me towards that was one day going to like the video store. I don't even think it wasn't Blockbuster. It was like Video Hut, and it's just that cover, like
Yeah.
the cover of the house with him in the window and then like the fog. Like you just kind of gravitated towards it.
That's a great poster. Like, like, I was just looking at that when I was doing my notes, and I'm like, fuck, man, like, what a great video box cover too, right? Like you said, you're going through the aisles and you're like, it's gonna stop you, it's gonna draw you in, right? So
Yeah.
so as a programmer, have you programmed this at the Revue before?
Oh, yeah, multiple times. Yeah. Yeah. And I always introduce it. I do it for Drunken Cinema. We just did the second one this year, which has been my like white whale because I could never find the rights to program it. And then apparently it's in limbo. So you can
You can just do what you want with it.
do what you want with it, right? So it took me many years to figure that one out.
If you were going to do a double feature with this, what would you program?
With what? With Fright
The
Night?
original Fright Night, yeah.
I'd probably do the remake. I think it'd do well. Or like the second movie. I think the second one did really well when we screened it this year. And I think people thought it was better. It was better for me to watch it with an audience than it has ever been watching it by myself since I was a kid. So
Interesting. Scott, what about you? Do you got anything off the top of your head that you would program with this? I always like double features. Sometimes when you're sitting down to watch movies,
Yeah, I
like,
don't know.
what would I watch with this, right? So
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Like either two or the remake would.
Yeah. I mean,
Or you could start off with like Monster Squad, then work your way to this one if you're doing like a kids programming.
Yes. I was thinking this has a very Monster Squad, and again, same kind of time. Monster Squad's what, 86, something like that. Like it's in that space. And it's got that kind of feel too. Yeah, I think go Monster Squad and then into Fright Night. And if you've got to put like the kids away, you can put them away. If you're not, you can watch, like you said, like Serena said, it's a film that's not too scary, right? So it's a good horror primer, I would say.
yeah, gateway horror for my friends was Monster Squad. I was always the one I was allowed to show my friends. But yeah, I would also pair it with my favorite movie of all time too, Weird Science, because it came out the same weekend. So they both came out the same weekend. I've always kind of wanted to do a series where you just base it off like the marquee, like like the ads, the newspaper ads that would double bill things. So Weird Science and Fright Night was often double billed because it came out the same weekend.
That'd be a great pair up. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we let Serena go? Scott?
Ever?
No.
No.
Nothing? Okay.
I like it. Like if we were doing the compare and contrast, like the thing with the remake that I kind of like is how we're talking about with Farrell's performance. Like they pretty much say he's not like the suave debonair, like he is a shark, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just like literally, and I like it that they pretty much like permanent, like McLovin pretty much says how he's gonna die because he says he's a shark and then he dies getting pulled into the pool with the blood. I was like, nice Jaws. But yeah, like I think if you haven't watched these movies, like you really fucking need to, because
My
like
favorite scene in the remake, though, like it's weird. I can't pin point one from the first movie, but from the remake I can. And it's the scene where Jerry's asking for beer from Charlie.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's standing in the doorway, but he can't
Yeah.
he can't
It's
come in, right?
such a good scene because like how he plays him too is so twitchy, and he's just, like he has these weird eye moments, like he's just looking around, and it's like he's just so anxious, and I like how Jerry plays it, and he kind of goes into Jerry Dandridge mode at that point for like fans. Like once he just like there's a lot of bad people out here, Charlie, and you're like, oh, that's very Chris Sarandon, so I like that. And I like the casting. McLovin, it was too on the nose, I felt, and
Mm.
I do
Poor
like
guy, eh? Like nobody even calls him by his name. It's just like McLovin. He will always be McLovin. Guy will be getting his Academy Award, and they'll be like, "And the Academy Award goes to McLovin." Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I am McLovin.
No, you're not. No one's McLovin. McLovin's never existed because that's a made-up, dumb, fucking fairy tale name, you fuck!
You go ahead, Serena.
Oh yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, the original film, it's got an 83% from the critics, it's got a 76 from the audience. Sometimes I feel that those are skewed a bit on older films because people haven't gone back and really rated them. 25 million off a $9 million budget. It clearly would have made money. As you said, it was always on TV, VHS rentals, all that. And it's got a running time of 106 minutes. I think it's paced well. 90-minute, 100-minute film is a great place to be. I like 2 hours for a drama if it's well constructed, but for genre, there's no reason to be going over 2 hours for the most part, right? So
I mean, again, we're doing that now these days. Like Substance was over 2 hours. I was like, holy shit. But I think we're kind of like now 2024, we're kind of going back into the vibes of the 80s. Like we're finally like exploring ideas that we explored in the 80s, these outlandish, weird ideas that didn't seem to work now, but they are. Because I think people are nostalgic for how horror films made them feel.
before we let you go, Serena, I just want to pick your brain a bit. What
Yeah.
would you recommend for people to be watching, old, new? What are you excited for coming out? Because again, you are really tapped into the pipeline. So yeah, what films do you think that maybe people have missed that they should definitely see, and what are you excited about going forward?
Ooh, wow. Okay. I guess for this year, I mean, I talked about it on the podcast, loved Think Twice, loved The Substance. I think those two movies are gonna actually blow up and like for when people watch them at home. Uh the one I'm looking forward to is Sinners. I can't wait to watch that one. And I haven't seen a good vampire movie in a long time since we're talking about vampire movies, and I think the last good vampire movie I saw in theaters was probably 30 Days a Night, or at least like, entertaining. So I would strongly recommend that one. And I don't know if I'm missing anything.
Are you excited for Nosferatu then? Speaking of vampires.
Nosferatu, I don't know. I haven't seen the second trailer. I'm more excited for Last of Us season 2. I'm more excited for TV, to be quite honest. So, Last of Us season 2, just because I played the game, I cannot wait. Actually, I can wait to re-traumatize myself. But seeing all my friends and family who have no idea what the game is about and they're gonna have to watch it, I think that's going to be one of the scariest things for people to experience in next year.
Okay, well, that's so Serena. Obviously, people can find you on the Movies and Chaos podcast with your co-host Mark Palermo. Where else can people hit you up on like which socials? How do people get in touch with you if so be it?
You can reach me on Twitter. I think it's not Twitter, X, S Whitney 1984. You can find me on Letterboxd when I occasionally write something. And then I'm on Instagram. But you can find us on Movies and Chaos socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also, I'm the one running all the review socials, so Revue Cinema socials. So you can find me on there as well.
And as everybody knows, all the links and stuff will be in the show notes and stuff. Serena, thank you so much for coming out to the show. I know we've been playing this game for a couple months.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's just unfortunately with what was going on in the summer, it made my life a little difficult to be planning. But yeah, thank you for having me. And if you need me to come back, I will come back.
And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com.
So, I mean, that was pretty good, right? I feel like we probably should have just let the episode keep playing because in our break there, we ended up talking to her for like another 15 minutes. So,
it's good to know I still have a job.
Yeah, you still have, Scott still has a job. So everybody out there who loves Scott's soft and silky voice, he's here for at least another episode.
We got one more guest.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.